And recognize friends. We are recording today's session. Thank you, Kelly, for reminding us that we are recording. Good to see you, Brian. Good to see you, Tammy, Jennifer, Lynn. Thank you so much for engaging with us and letting us know you're here. Good to see you, Tony. Steve, it's always good to see you. All right, so keep them coming. We, again, would love for each of us to kind of get an idea or notion of who we have on the call. We've got people from across the country in all time zones. So again, really excited to have you all here and join us. So a couple of just kind of basic setup pieces before we kind of dig into today's agenda. The purpose of us kind of coming together each month across the school year is really to create that professional learning community where we can grow together, build capacity, lean in and learn about the stories and the things that are happening in your community, and connect with kind of your job alike across the country. So we're hoping over time to deepen your connection with the people on this call. We're going to provide some opportunities to engage in smaller groups in our breakout sessions so that you can get to know other people on the call who you probably have not connected yet with. We are going to geek out all year and share some lessons learned through the demonstration sites and other ISF projects going on across the country. It's really exciting for our team to see the growth of ISF and the expansion of PBIS and really kind of pulling in that mental health component into the fabric of the PBIS work. So again, we're really excited to learn from all the lessons and all the work going on across the country. We also want to share, but also curate the resources. There is so much out there to consider. And so we really feel like this group can really kind of script the moves, but also really identify which resources are needed at the right time and match up those resources to the people just in time. So nobody feels like they have to reinvent the wheel. They're just building on the amazing networking opportunity we have in front of us. And then finally, in real time, as we're adjusting every day to life, we are going to try to respond to and adapt to all of the current strengths and needs that are going on in your community. So again, really appreciative that you've taken the time out of your busy schedule. As we go through today, we just want to recognize that we are all pretty exhausted. I think Kelly and I, before folks were jumping on the call, were just kind of expressing to each other how exhausting living right now is, and just kind of making it through each week with so much coming at us. And so we want to make sure that we are creating spaces and creating healthy organizations where we're prioritizing wellness, specifically wellness right now, thinking about the adults that are taking on a lot of stress and anxiety and workload right now. And so as we create organizational health and we focus on this notion of collective care, it's important to really set up spaces for emotional support, and that can happen during any team meeting. Please double check on your friends, whether it be a text or a phone call. Just let folks know you're thinking about them and sending good vibes their way. Make sure that you're taking full advantage of the employee assistance program resources that you might have that are in your community. We know that a lot of our insurance plans and the primary care health sector, the hospitals, are really interested in prevention and promotion of wellness. And so to what extent can we really be taking full advantage of those resources that are in our community? And finally, just making sure that everybody recognizes that there is a hotline that's always available 24/7. We want to encourage you to be engaged with us today, but also be aware of your stress level and what you might be holding in your body. Recognize and name the emotions that you're experiencing as we kind of model and practice that as we are building kind of a network of social emotional leaders who are growing the capacity of all of our staff to dip their toes into this wellness sector. Pay attention to joy, recognize and validate grief. do a body check for areas of tightness. It's really important right now to move, right? To physically move your body and increase the dose of movement. It really helps set the stage with the neurological integration. So just make sure that in addition to promoting movement with the adults, let's make sure we're promoting all of those biology breaks and movement opportunities in the classrooms, because our kids need the same kind of dose of movement. And finally, nurture your body with healthy food to the extent possible, build calming routines for sleep, and build routines for daily exercise. And so again, so we're moving away from self-care, which I think we're all kind of gagging on that term these days, to really this notion of building collective care and building wellness in our communities that we're serving. So as we lean into today, I wanted just to give you an advanced preview of things that we're going to be covering. The title of our first session together with you is Situating Wellness as the Priority in Designing the Way Forward. So we really want to disrupt status quo. We never want to go back to the way things were prior to kind of this COVID era. And certainly it's about reimagining the landscape forever and really prioritizing situating wellness into the fabric of everything that we do, rather than thinking of it as a place or somewhere where people go to get well, right? We want to make sure it's part of the DNA of our educational system. We're going to give opportunities to connect in breakouts. We're going to talk additionally about prioritizing wellness and how that's taking place in the communities that you're working in. Talk a little bit about staff wellness, and again, have an opportunity to break out with some smaller groups to talk about ideas and ways that you're promoting staff wellness and what you're seeing that's encouraging, and maybe even identify some barriers to prioritizing that. We'll identify some new resources, and then we'll look ahead to future calls with some of the topics that we are going to be covering in the future. So with that, we want to connect in breakouts. We are recognizing that many of you don't know one another and that you're new to this space. So we want to give you an opportunity to at least connect with a couple of individuals. So we'd like you to introduce yourself and talk to the folks in your breakout room. And you can either geek on a binge-worthy TV show and connect that way, or if you want to take a little deeper dive, you can kind of talk about what's on your mind today and what might be holding something that might be stress, or something that you want to bring and offer something that you are finding joy around. So something you want to celebrate. So totally up to you with respect to how you share and what you focus on. But Kelly, I will ask you to get us into those breakout rooms so we can start to introduce ourselves and connect.
All right, here we go, everyone. Thank you. Oh, it looks like some of you were unassigned. Maybe, okay. I was working
Can you
on.
assign Angie and Justin to the Washington?
Yep.
Thank you. Hi, Angie. Hi, Justin. Good to see you.
And everyone else, we were kind of going random, so I'm just going to do my best here.
Hi, Maggie. Hi, Emil.
There.
Hi, Danielle. It's good to see everyone. Hi, Jason. Oh, Johnny needs to go to, oh, you saw that. Did you see that? Johnny needed to go to Washington.
That might not have happened. So he's not going to know that we put Washington together and everyone else was random.
Okay.
You know what? I can probably go in there. Let me see. Oh, here we go. That was a special challenge, Susan, to get only Washington and one and random.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. All right, let me see. Whomever's name that is, you said, goes to Washington?
Johnny,
what?
it says Johnny's iPhone.
Johnny's iPhone.
Yeah.
Okay, here, let me see if I can do it now, if it'll let me. I don't know what that just did to that person, but I think it worked.
Thank you. And I didn't give a time amount, but I do want people to connect. So you want to do like 5 minutes? I don't know.
Let's see. Okay, I think I got it. All right. Rob and Chuck, you have been assigned to breakout rooms. So, oh, Rob, it looks like you're driving. Probably don't click any buttons on your phone while you're driving. How about that? All right, Chuck, I'm not sure if you're there, but you should have an invitation to join a breakout room.
Maybe taking a call or something.
Yeah.
Oh. And you've got the video queued up, so we're good on that. Okay.
Yep.
I think I'm going to hide this one for today. Can you hear hammering in the background? Okay. We've got somebody doing some work outside, and it's amazing how Zoom, I think it does a really good job of filtering noise in the background. It's loud, so.
Now that you mention it, and if I really listen, I can hear it, but I wouldn't just pick up on it, I don't think.
All right.
I didn't set my timer, did you? I think it's been about 4 minutes.
Yeah, you want to give them a minute?
Yeah, if I click close, I think that gives them 1 minute.
Okay. How many people are in each one?
It ranges from, there's 6 in one all the way up to 9. Oh, no, there's 6 in several. So
Okay.
between 6 and 9 people.
Okay. Did you just hit 1 minute? Hi, Tony.
I accidentally clicked out of my room. Can you?
Oh, no.
I don't know if there's time to put me back in. I was mid-sentence too. They're probably like, what?
Oh.
Same. I was mid-sentence and got kicked out.
I think you have to go, if you should have a button to click joining back in, but there's only 30 more seconds and everybody's going to come back.
Okay. I'll hang out here. Rob's on, so I'm in good place.
Okay, we'll just play a little music for you.
There you go. That was good music earlier.
Oh, good. Yeah, I have to dance to go-go, so I shouldn't be on video.
It always makes me think of a good movie. Good movies.
All right, welcome back. Hopefully you got to meet somebody new and started to connect and started to chat it up, and hopefully you got a really good binge-worthy TV show out of it for plans for the weekend now, right? We're always in search of that. So let's continue on our journey. We'll have a couple more opportunities to talk, and please, at any point in time, feel free to come off mute, feel free to ask questions. Also, feel free to engage with us in chat. We'd love to hear from you. All right, so we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into how you're feeling, and you can just kind of keep this to yourself, or you can populate in chat if you're so inclined. But just think about the scale of where you are right now and kind of reflect around these questions. So again, you can populate in chat, you can write it down, you can just kind of take note of it in your head. But how are you feeling? Are you finding it difficult to stay focused on what's happening in the present? Are you noticing feelings of physical tension or discomfort? Debbie, yes, I was distracted. I have found, for whatever reason this morning, I think I've walked into more rooms and not known why I've gone into that room. I feel like the frequency of me forgetting things is increasing. And I had the good fortune, and I'll give you the link to this to consider watching later, but Dr. and Kelsey helped me pronounce her last name, Mousif, out of Washington State, did this amazing event for Kelsey Schmitz for the Smart Center and MHTTC last Friday, and I'll give you the link to look at it. But what she offered to all of us was that most adults in the back of their head are thinking they have ADHD, a new diagnosis, or they think they've got early onset Alzheimer's. And it's because our brains are just so exhausted. And thank you, Kelsey, for giving us that video. It was so nice that 20 minutes was such a nice breath of fresh air and so validating, and made me think that I don't have ADHD, I don't have early onset Alzheimer's. I'm just completely overwhelmed and exhausted like we all are. So again, thank you. Are you thinking that you're running on automatic with not much awareness of what you're doing? Find yourself listening to someone with one ear, but doing something else at the same time? Preoccupied, working on automatic pilot, snack without being aware I'm eating. So yeah, so I think, and thank you, Tony and Deborah. Oh gosh, Deborah, I don't want to do that to you. I have done number 6, and it's a strange and annoying feeling. Yes, yeah, I have driven literally around a beltway without realizing I drove around the beltway twice. So yeah, I think we're kind of all feeling that, and it's good to hear from especially other people who are in the brain science and disaster research field that this is normal, right? So, all right, so we've taken kind of a pulse on how we're feeling, and now we want to take just a minute to do a mindfulness activity. And so I'm going to kind of sit back and we're going to play just a 3-minute kind of deep belly breath mindful moment.
Mindful breathing. Close your eyes and rest your hands on your knees. Bring your attention to the touch of your body on your seat. feel the weight of your body on your chair or cushion. Make sure that your back is straight and that you're comfortable. Take a few deep breaths. While you're breathing deeply, relax your shoulders, your stomach muscles, the muscles in your face, your hands, and your legs. Let go of all the tightness in your body. Now bring your attention back to your breath. Notice what it feels like as it enters through your nose, goes down through your throat, filling your lungs, and back out through your nose. Notice your stomach and chest rise and fall each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. And just allow your breathing to be natural and relaxed. Now bring your attention to the feeling of your breath in your nose. Feel your breath as it comes in and goes out. Just focus on this sensation, paying attention to each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. As you inhale, maybe your breath feels cool. And as you exhale, maybe it feels a little warmer. When your mind wanders, or if you become distracted, just notice what's going on in your head, and then gently bring your attention back to your breath, going in and out. Focus on the feeling of your breath and allow thoughts and feelings to come and go in the background. Now gently bring your attention back to the touch of your body on your seat and open your eyes.
Okay. So I want you to take a moment to reflect on how you're feeling now. Maybe notice the tension in your body. Did it change? What about your heart rate? What about your focus and your ability to attend what she was saying? And so again, if you want to offer kind of any thoughts or in the chat or engage with us, what are you noticing right now? Thank you, Debbie. Breathing is more relaxed. Yes. Tension decrease, increased focus, feeling a little bit more relaxed. Awesome, thank you.
Susan, I never realized how uptight my shoulders get. I just don't even recognize the change of posture till I take that, like the activity we just did.
Yeah, thanks, Angie. I agree. I don't feel often days. I will go, and we're all doing this on Zoom calls, one after the other. I don't recognize how much stress I'm holding until the end of the day. And so what I'm personally trying to do is increase the dose of these mindfulness breaks as I see more frequent times where I'm distracted or I'm walking around and I forget what I'm doing, right? So that just kind of calls to me as an individual that I need a little bit more deep breathing and a little bit more kind of resetting, if you will. And so the other thing I think that I notice is that on days where I take time exercising and I do these mindfulness activities or I do a walk outside, I'm actually more productive. And I've geeked out to the point, I'm channeling George Sugai at this point, tracking my behavior and using the B+ app for my own benefit to kind of track my, my awareness of the benefits of doing these types of activities, right? These wellness checks. And so as we think about what that means for us as an individuals, I want us to also call out the fact that doing this and modeling this for the adults that we work with may help us build that capacity up and buy-in on incorporating these kinds of things into the classroom setting. Now, many teachers do this naturally, many teachers are very comfortable with it, but so many people aren't yet comfortable with this. Notice today that we brought in a video clip. So we had somebody else do that mindfulness minute. It wasn't anchored on anybody's ability within our group to do that, right? There's so many amazing video clips. So if I'm a teacher that's kind of just leaning into this, I can bring that into my classroom. So as I become aware of those benefits, I can also feel more confident about me modeling it for my kids in my classroom. And notice that we're offering this ability to track on-task behavior because we want to move beyond accessing supports and moving beyond social validity data. Now that data is important, but the ultimate goal is, are we better? And what are those outcomes that we need to measure, just like in the academic and the behavior space? What are those hard evidence measurements that we can incorporate that will let us know, holy cow, we are more productive, not just as individuals, but collectively as a classroom. We're able to stay on track. We're able to have a calm response, right? So as we try to model these during our sessions, we also want you to incorporate some of these things so that we can create capacity building so all staff feel a little bit more confident, create that buy-in, and anchor what we do in the mindfulness, social emotional domains, anchor that to specific outcome measures so that we can directly see that as a result, students are benefiting and staff are benefiting. So as we go through this year, we have all of our dates. Hopefully they're saved on your calendar, but we're wondering in what ways we can support you, right? We're going to be able to come on, we're going to be able to direct you to resources, to curate those resources, to connect with others. Hopefully you connect outside of these meetings with others if you find a story really resonates with you, or you find your job alike somewhere else in the country that you're geeking out on. But be thinking about ways that we can support and connect with you across the year. Think about the challenges or questions that you have, and our whole team is available to you by email. We can set up individual calls, but just let us know throughout our time together ways that we can support you. Kelly, am I missing anything there on that side?
I think you got it. Thanks, Susan. I appreciate everyone's active participation in the chat.
Yes, thank you so much. And I am so grateful for your beautiful faces too. It's so great to see you. So I want to also offer this as we come into a weekend and hopefully have some relaxing plans ahead of us. We have so much potential right now to reverse all trends, really to transform everything forever, to really create a healthier path forward. And the accumulation of behavior sciences, prevention sciences, has really led us to the conclusion that the key to us being able to recover is to make the environments more nurturing. So to what extent are we giving full attention to ensuring that we are building an ecosystem in which everyone thrives, right? And so that is going to be part of the transformation in this movement to a healthier way forward. So how do we situate wellness into the center of every aspect of this work and really prevent the likelihood that we go down the path of needing extra supports and really meeting the vast majority of need first and foremost. And again, what Dr. Kira Mausath has offered us is this, that it may take longer than we were first kind of expecting to recover. and we're running into some road bumps and taking our breath away sometimes, right? But the most common outcome she offers after a disaster is resilience. So again, just in the spirit of engaging in setting that intention of hope is going to be really important in our way forward. And so I'm wondering if anyone knows who this gentleman is in this picture. Let us know if you know who this is. Yes. Yes. So I'm not trying to sell you Apple TV. I promise I'm not. But if you have an Apple device, it is free. And holy cow, we need to Ted Lasso the heck out of our education system, because it's just this extraordinary, he has this extraordinary ability to make sure everybody is seen and heard and valued. And what I love about Nate the Great, and I'm so excited that you all knew who that was, is that in one of the very first episodes, right? And I'm not going to give anything away. He is, he's in charge of the laundry. He's kind of doing other duties as assigned. He's kind of this assistant that nobody knows. He's kind of invisible to the team. And the very first day on the job, oh yeah, Kimberly, let's not forget about Roy Kent. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. And he won an Emmy. So again, not trying to sell you anything, but this show makes me so happy. And watching all of the benefits of creating conditions where everybody has a sense of purpose, everybody has a sense of belonging, everybody feels valued is extraordinary. So with that, I want to have you all talk in breakout rooms about how we ensure wellness is not just a priority now, but forever. How do we situate wellness into every aspect of what we do? We, as we're trying to secure buy-in with staff who are really unsure about all of this, we already kind of modeled for you ways to kind of create that sense of buy-in and ownership. But what are other ways that you're doing? What are other things that how are you positioning wellness in the extraordinary events that are transpiring? So with that, and how are you collecting data on impact? What are some of the evaluation tricks that you're incorporating into your existing evaluation plans that are really linking and directly connecting the work of wellness into maybe an academic outcome? So Kelly, with that, if you all, we're going to put you in breakouts again. Are we going to go to the same breakout, Kelly?
Yes.
Awesome. Yep. Okay, so we're going to go to the same breakout. Again, just a time to connect and talk about how you're doing this in your communities. Okay.
You want to go about 5 minutes again?
Yeah. I don't know. Sorry, I'm talking. You're on next with the next set of slides.
Okay. I'm actually gonna mute. I'm gonna pause.
On the first one's on, no problem. The first one's on practices. The second one's on the actual skills, including dialectical thinking and The superintendent, his wife are teaching it. They teach the courses, and they're teaching it to all 3,500 employees. Everybody's required to take it, bus drivers included. And Rebecca Blanton and I've been up. They've invited us up to sit in on them, and they're fantastic. But when the superintendent of the school system is standing in front of you teaching it, it's a priority. And I think all of us in mental health and in PBIS, we all know that's where it starts. And if it's a priority there, it's going to be a priority all the way down. So I just think that's a great example. And my colleague Jason Kalp is the school climate specialist there, and he was about to share a little bit. He just presented to their Board of Education just a couple of weeks ago. So Jason.
Yep, and I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my camera here. I'm trying to open it, but hopefully everybody can hear. And with Hall County, it's been really unique. And so, yes, we've had a chance to do some presentation at the board. And so in terms of, but the presentations to the board were really just to kind of, focus the work that we're doing. So similar to what Jason was saying, that evening, we spent a lot of time talking about resilience, and Mrs. Schofield did some demonstration, some of those kind of things. And so for the evaluation piece though, I wish I had more to tell you today. We're really early in this. And so, but one of the things that we're trying to focus on is, moving away from just participation or access as the metric for measurement. And then, how do we integrate into our data evaluation, the impact that we're having? And so, we're trying to be careful that, that even when we see relationships there, that, we don't want to qualify it as from, I guess, a statistical perspective, that it's not causation, it's more like correlation. And so what we're hoping though to see is simultaneous to the implementation of, say, our PBS framework and the academic supports through their MTSS and RTI process, we can start linking positive outcomes. We may be able to see some magnitude examination to that based on what we were doing prior and then what we see now. And so that should help us see some of those things. But it's still pretty early in that. And so, like I said, I wish I had more. I think when we get that, everybody's kind of working on that right now too, around at least the folks that I've been talking to around the state. So we're looking forward to more of that. I just don't have it to share today.
Awesome, Jason. That's amazing. And in December, we're going to focus solely on incorporating some of the mental health data into our existing evaluation plans. We'll take a deep dive and we'll highlight one of our states that we've been working with that will walk us through that. And even today, we'll get into this a little bit about how we organize and collect the information. So Jason, I'm happy that you're pulling out or elevating for us one of the key messages of the interconnected process, which is beyond access, right? Our kids deserve better. And it's not just about counting the number of kids who are showing up for mental health supports. It's about, what was the presenting problem? How do we progress monitor fidelity? And how do we progress monitor that what we did actually made a specific impact? And so in many cases, we can actually use the presenting data as the way to track progress and impact. So we will dedicate a whole session to that. And today we'll touch on it just a little bit. But I'm so appreciative that you were sharing that with us, because it's so critical that our superintendents are modeling for this and walking the walk. And it sounds like this district is doing just that. So congratulations. I also really appreciate the presentation to the school board and how transparent you are being. I know that there are others on the call that have also done some board presentations. And so I think that's going to be a really important consideration as we build that campaign to destigmatize and kind of demystify what this thing is in the mental health. So I think the more opportunities we have to get in front of people, specifically members of our community, the more opportunities we'll have to let them know that that wellness is a skill, and we're teaching a set of skills to help navigate the stressors of life. And so, so I really kind of appreciate that. Other folks from their breakouts?
I have two things. Susan, one is actually just based on something you said. We were trying to figure out how to measure change in stigma. So when you were saying destigmatize, that's kind of related to the mental health piece. So maybe if that could be part of our conversation when we're talking about the data, that's something we've been struggling with because we have kind of a end the stigma kind of campaign with our Project Aware work, but we're struggling with figuring out, you know, other than just people accessing services, is that changing people's thoughts about mental health?
Right. Right. Yeah, we can certainly go into some of those ways that we can measure that. You know, it's similar to me in the ways that we secured buy-in with faculty when we were back in the olden days when we were first kind of getting started with PBIS, right? And so to what extent could we look to see how our faculty are embedding some of these strategies that we might be practicing with them in a morning huddle with adults? How is that translating into the classroom? And are they more open to being able to do some of these strategies and skills and embed them and incorporate them into a science course, right? You could watch the Mars landing and have a mindful moment and then have it be situated right directly into the lesson plan for the day. And so maybe we can start to count the number of staff who have truly embedded that right alongside, again, the social validity data could be really powerful and important too. But yeah, we'll get into the weeds in that just a little bit more.
And I just wanted to give a little shout out for something that was shared in my breakout, but Amy from Midwest shared a resource that they used for promoting the leaders in the building to support self-care of their staff. And I just quickly started looking through it, but I was trying not to be too distracted. And I think Amy, if other people, maybe everyone else has seen it, but if they haven't, it's a really cool resource to, I think, promote the broader use of self-care. So just a little plug for that work. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Debbie.
Amy, is that something that you could share with the rest of the group in the chat?
Absolutely. I'll do it right now.
Okay.
Thank you. Other things to share out from any of your breakout conversations?
From our group, which also is pretty heavy Georgia based, but one of the things that was shared out was that that there is a district creating a self-care center, but we were talking about how we really need to expand beyond self-care being a place, and so I think it just goes to kind of what was also being shared there, and that that self-care isn't necessarily a place, but more about the way we work and how we support one another. And I really think, if we can lean on what we know about supporting students and it is a universal tier 1 practice, how are we doing that to support the adults? How are we defining self-care and having a common vision? How are we teaching? How are we supporting staff to use those skills? So I really appreciated that the Georgia team was saying this is great, and how do we push beyond that?
Yeah, I totally appreciate that, Katie. And, I even have a slide kind of dedicated to some of the worries going on with so much money and attention getting put into the mental health space. I really worry that we're going to use the same approach we took with special ed, where it was referral, label, diagnose, and situate that on somebody else's shoulders rather than embedding it into the fabric of what we do and making it just the DNA of the system. And so wellness is not a place. When we are counting the number of kids accessing those services, I don't even know what that means. So we need to move way beyond this notion of access to care. It needs to be customized. It needs to be fitting what the specific need is. It needs to be evidence-based. I mean, all the same principles that we adhere to, I'm making words up, adhere to for academics, right? And so our kids deserve more. And we need to push this notion and be bold, right? And I have a whole slide kind of dedicated to that notion. So thank you for elevating that. And thank you, Amy, for sharing that resource. That's tremendous. Thank you. Other folks? By the way, I just heard that it's Justin's birthday today. So Justin Pulis out of Washington. Happy birthday, my friend.
Happy birthday.
Thank
I
you.
can't think of a better way to
Thank you.
spend it than with this group right here.
Exactly. What a party.
Is this a singing kind of situation?
We are
I was-
recording.
I mean, we could, but I kind of want to save your ears. Maybe I'll put it on the playlist.
Okay.
Happy birthday. All right, Kelly.
Okay. As you all were talking about this really great discussion that you had in smaller groups, and I'm glad to hear that you all want those conversations to continue. I want to share some encouraging news around our first random control trial for the Interconnected Systems Framework. And we have just gotten started with our second subsequent study and have another kind of offshoot study from the first one that I'll tell you about here in a minute. But before we go there, I thought Susan and I am planning for today that we would just, again, in this idea of kind of grounding and situating ourselves and our messages coming out of our center around helping everyone get back to basics, we thought we would just kind of make sure we're all on the same page with definitions. I think you all could probably present these next few slides just as well as we could. Nevertheless, when we're talking about how to better align and integrate efforts, whether you're at the state, regional, or district level, it's really important to have key leaders and stakeholders who have authority to make decisions about how people spend their time and policies and funding structures. And I know Susan's going to talk in a little bit about, using this new money and leveraging it in a way that, again, we don't have everyone thinking we have to do one more thing, one new thing, but rather we can take what we know to do and enhance it and do it really well. And so when we're talking about Interconnected Systems Framework, and you don't have to call it that, it is that structure and process that we're referring to. We have been utilizing these key messages that, gosh, probably more years ago than we want to say out loud, together with our partners from the National Center for School Mental Health, really agreed upon and landed on this notion that when we're talking about aligning and integrating for an equitable multi-tiered system of support for social, emotional, behavioral health and wellness, we want to have a single system of delivery. So no matter where people are employed through, they're on one set of teams. The second key message is that we have to pay attention to outcomes and progress monitoring, whatever the data is that led us to those presenting problems in schools. And we have to move away from simply counting that we connected a kid to a person. So just like Susan said, a wellness center is, wellness isn't a place. Neither is saying a kid's going to meet with the social worker or the clinician. That's not an intervention. And so we have to define what's our presenting problem, what data are we going to progress monitor, and what outcomes are we going to look for. Mental health is for all. That's how we started this conversation today. We have to first be paying attention to the wellness of our adults, especially within our schools. I thought maybe it would be fun today to ask how many of you have been asked to drive a school bus, because believe it or not, I've heard that from some other colleagues. Pretty sure I'm going to guess true in every state that you have to have a CDL, a special license, to drive a school bus, yet sounds like some of our colleagues are being asked to do that because there's a shortage of bus drivers and substitute teachers and even regular teachers and clinicians. Amy Wheeler-Sutton, I've been telling everyone that they should maybe consider moving to Vermont because y'all could use some extra help up there, right? And that's true everywhere. So we're all stretched, especially those working in schools, and we have to pay attention to their mental health and then also equip educators so that they can feel confident and competent to address the mental health needs of all students within our schools. And then the fourth key message, of course, is using those core features of our multi-tiered system of support to install any related initiative, right? So SEL, trauma-informed, restorative practices, suicide prevention, bullying prevention, you name it, we have to use and apply the core feature logic, including those who might be coming into schools from outside agencies to deliver interventions with and for our students. This slide here is a little bit of a newer graphic. Our team has been working with the web page developers for pbis.org, and we've given a bit of a refresh to our mental health, social, emotional well-being page. And on it, you will find, just this might be something that would be helpful to you to share with others or point them there, that gives just some basic messaging around the role and function of the conversations across tiers. And, we certainly acknowledge that in smaller rural communities, you might have one team and they talk about each tier of our multi-tiered system. That's okay. But those conversations are going to shift based on, what it is that's the context or function of that team conversation. Big idea, of course, is that we want to have clinicians at every conversation so that they can lend their expertise, bring their data, share what they know about what's happening out in the community. It's equally important to have the voice of youth and families. We want to make sure to get perspective and perception of all involved. And then, of course, that idea of gathering contextual data from a school community and district to have a process for selecting evidence-based interventions that match need, and then, of course, continuously monitoring both fidelity of implementing interventions as well as outcomes. And so with that, I'm going to share a little bit about some outcomes from our random control trial. Some of you may have heard some of the preliminary outcomes that we've shared in the past. Our first major paper sharing the findings of the study is about to be submitted for publication. And so we have a little bit more concrete findings to share with you today. And just to refresh everyone's mind, we had 24 elementary schools in the southeast of the country who were randomized into 3 conditions: PBIS only, PBIS plus school mental health. So a clinician from a mental health provider organization came into the school. We referred to this as business as usual. They kind of had a caseload of students that they worked with. We didn't provide any technical assistance or professional development to them. And then the third condition was the interconnected systems framework. And for 2 consecutive school years, we provided training and technical assistance to that cohort. And all students were participating in the data collection unless their parents opted them out of the study. So we had a huge set of data and student records that were data mined for this study, which is why it took us a while, not me, took the data analysts a while to crunch all the numbers to put the paper together. All right, so the thing about this slide is if a person just read it, they would think to themselves, if I want to implement the ISF, it means I'm going to have more meetings and they're going to be longer. No, thank you, right? But the point of this slide here and these findings are that when compared to the other 2 study conditions, those teams who were in the schools implementing the ISF had greater participation from a multidisciplinary team, including administrators and clinicians, both from the district and the community partner. And they tended to actually have their meetings. So in the other 2 conditions, either meetings weren't scheduled or they were scheduled and sometimes canceled because of competing priorities. So these teams met And they were using data for decision-making and having great problem-solving conversations. So not only did they have their meetings, but yes, compared to the other two conditions, they tended to last longer because of the robust discussion and problem-solving with data. Because of all of that, if you want to go to the next slide, Susan, please. Here are some of the results of the study. This first one, which again, if you just read the bullets on the slide, it does sound like access. Kids were more likely to be connected to interventions in the schools implementing the ISF compared to, in this case, it would be the PBIS plus school mental health condition. Although in PBIS only, certainly there were tier 2, tier 3 interventions. And so in order to get outcomes, we first have to identify kids who have greater need and connect them to appropriate interventions. And at the risk of maybe saying too much here, I just want to read a couple of sentences really quick from the paper. It says, it's striking that by the study's second year, community clinicians were providing almost half of the tier 2, tier 3 interventions in the ISF schools compared to only about 3% of interventions in the PBIS plus school mental health schools. So remember, they too had a clinician from the community agency. This finding provides additional support for the recognition that without a structure, so a system, for education mental health integration, as in the ISF, community clinicians often come into schools and operate in a co-located manner, quote, seeing a handful of students, but not participating on teams and not being integrated into the delivery system. So, the point here is, if we want to be able to better address the need that we're seeing in our schools, we have to, one, find the ways to identify it. So here, the use of the universal screener and triangulating that with other data. And then secondly, monitor that data over time as students are in appropriate intervention. The last thing I want to point out here is we did have a sub-study to address identifying Black students and students of color. And we found that in kind of digging into some of that data, these students were increasingly identified and connected to appropriate intervention when compared to the other two study conditions. And Susan, if you'll go to the next slide, please. It also led to the following findings here. And again, this is in comparison to the other two study conditions. And one big thing to recognize here is that this demonstrated that when implementing the ISF, the impact on discipline and suspensions, especially for students of color, was when compared to conditions who were implementing PBIS. So the ISF here is showing that it's even superior to PBIS in and of itself. Now, that's one study. And I will tell you that, keep in mind, we did provide a significant amount of coaching and technical assistance and training when compared to the other two conditions. So time will tell. But the good news is that there were positive outcome findings, especially for students of color. And we have a study now in another district in the Southeast where we are further exploring this idea of equitable outcomes and addressing disproportionate discipline using the ISF as a foundation. So all schools in the study are implementing the ISF, and then we're randomizing for some things we're doing to address implicit bias, teacher stress, student stress, and also really focusing on disaggregating data by race and ethnicity in order to get into how to tackle those data points. So I think that's really exciting, in addition to having a second randomized control trial on the ISF be funded, and that one's literally just launching. But hopefully we'll be able to continue to replicate these findings. And this data might be helpful to you as you're working with districts and schools around them thinking about prioritizing the work they're doing.
Yeah, Kelly, I just want to also mention that, you know, for those of us who have been doing PBIS for 20 or more years, right, PBIS is continuously evolving. And
For
so our main mission with these randomized control trials is to strengthen PBIS, right?
Yep.
So think of it as PBIS 2.0. And we are moving in that direction, specifically with our tiered fidelity inventory that we're revising. And so many of you will probably be asked to be content experts to review the new TFI, but by spring or perhaps even next year, once it's been gone through the course of validation, you are going to see not only mental health be situated in the DNA, but also equity. And so I don't want you to get caught up in, oh, well, PBIS and ISF are different and, you know, all these conditions. What we were studying are the improvements of PBIS when we bring in all of our essential partners into the work of PBIS instead of situating it in a co-located manner.
That's perfect. Thank you.
So do you want me to cover this one, Kelly?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. So any questions for Kelly, by the way, before we move on to this little section?
This is Debbie. I just had a question about the tier 2 interventions. Did you define what constituted tier 2 for the purpose of the study was curious.
Yes, and because it was, done via research, we were actually very clear and explicit about which interventions were in the continuum that the team selected from. Now, of course, in the real world, we would do that with district and community leadership teams. And I'd be happy to share that continuum. We probably have it in another PowerPoint that we've used before, but we definitely did do that, Debbie.
Kelly, there's
And
another
Angie,
question from Angie. Okay.
Yeah, yes. We are just now submitting the first major paper with the findings for publication. So stay tuned. It will hopefully not be too terribly long, although it is a bit of a process to get to final publication.
We will, we do have the slides we're sharing with you now. Just let them know it's being submitted for peer review. Okay. So that leads us to connecting what we're finding in the randomized control trial to what we continue to need to learn about this PBIS improvement process called Interconnected Systems Framework. And so one of the things we wanted you all, as we kind of lean into a deeper discussion in our next call with evaluation, we wanted to at least have you consider starting to capture some of the key elements of implementation in your sites. And so we just wanted to offer kind of these really 5 simple things to start to do and collect as you might be making the case in your own systems for adopting this, this framework. And so the first one's just really defining who you're working with, right? What's the district and school context and what kind of community are you serving? What's the measure of fidelity across tiers? And we, in the Google Drive today, we are sharing an evaluation resource that considers what we've all been through over the last 2 years and talks about how you evaluate models during disruptive events like the one and disasters like the one we're experiencing right now. So we have that additional resource, but we'd like you to kind of see where were schools at baseline before COVID, and then track to see how they are maintaining their fidelity fall 2021 and winter 2022, just to kind of gauge, many of our schools didn't even complete the TFI last year. So we just want to kind of come back to baseline. Where were we before and where are we now? We also are really interested in tracking the type and amount of training and coaching support, not only that are getting provided from the national leaders, but how are you providing training and coaching in the sites that you're working with? We want to know about that dose. We want to know kind of what does it take to move the system and create and redesign and transform the system. So that's an interesting data point. Next is the impact on system. And again, many of you are using the SSFI, DSFI, the state capacity assessment, district capacity assessment. No matter what you're using, we want to be able to describe the impact on the system as you're providing training and coaching supports to your district and school teams. And, you know, the other descriptions could be quite important too, just to be able to describe how you're changing the role of clinicians and other staff. You know, did the job descriptions actually change in the HR departments? Are your hiring practices different? What kind of revisions are you making to the MOU? What about the adoption, installation, and implementation of screeners? And what kind of impact is that making on the system at large? What about your teaming processes and the ways that you're working more efficiently and streamlining your teaming processes, consolidating your teams and using formal routines and procedures across all teams? What about your evaluation design? What impact is that making? So that narrative, that descriptive review of some of the systemic features that are really gaining traction as you provide training and coaching. And then finally, what is the impact? And both from a fidelity measure, and again, you're using TFI, you're using maybe the ISF implementation inventory to kind of track and monitor, but what's the impact on staff, on families, on students with disabilities? So we just wanted to offer a list of some of the ways that we can incorporate this into our evaluation plan. So again, 5 simple questions to kind of just start thinking about. So before you start to do one more thing, before you bring in a social emotional curriculum, before you start to bring in a mindfulness approach or, you know, situate wellness into the fabric, how are we going to design and make sure that what we did makes an impact, not only in the system, but on the specific people living, working, and learning in that system. And we have a Word document, and you know, if you're getting direct technical assistance from one of the leaders on the call, we can work side by side with you on figuring out how to collect this data and how to make it feasible given all of the stressors that we're falling under this year. And we'll take a deeper dive into this during our November call. And I'm looking at the time and all of a sudden panicking. Okay. So again, in order to make this feasible and realistic, we designed Volume 2 using the stages of implementation, but I'm wondering if it might be kind of from a marketing standpoint, if we might want to consider designing this new way forward using the phases of recovery. And so with that document, we talk as we kind of enter the initial stages of recovery this fall, we talk about how critically important it is to stabilize the learning environment, which means we need to help our staff be well right now, or help them in their journey towards recovery as they help and are caregivers for the students that are coming in each and every day. And so again, another resource to take advantage of right now, and with this really clear laser focus on where we are in the process of recovery and what we should be focused on, which means having to make from our leaders a call to put things on the back burner right now, because we just can't afford to do everything. And when we get overwhelmed, it's just going to flood our brain space and our ability really to stay focused on what's important right now. So we were going to have you break into breakout groups one more time, and maybe we could pull off a really quick 5-minute. I hate doing that, but let's try to do it in a really quick 5 minutes. But as we think about prioritizing staff wellness, as we break you into smaller learning communities, we want to offer a moment of Zen. And certainly this was for me, and I've already mentioned Dr. Kira Mayseth. I'm just going to call her Mayseth because I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Mouseth, okay, thank you. And I've got the link here, and Kelsey also provided it. If you start like 5 minutes at the start of the webinar, and then it's just 20 minutes of her section, although the whole thing is brilliant, but if you don't have a full hour and a half, take a moment and watch her. And what she describes for us, or kind of what we started with today, that we all have this shared experience, and there is no roadmap. We have literally never gone through this as a national community and a world community before. our brains are exhausted and we're more likely to make decisions from an emotional part of our brain rather than being able to clearly think and design a strategy. So you're seeing anger, right, play out in the airlines. We're seeing anger play out in so many facets of our community, but it's really simply because our brains are so overworked that we're operating from a very emotional state. She talks about creating spaces to process. She talks about the neutralizing routine without calling it the neutralizing routine, where we literally have to create space between when something occurs and how we respond to that, which is part of that neutralizing routine from the equity work group from our center, which was, again, really awesome. And then she talks about active listening. And then she goes into the most common outcome from disasters is resilience, and she breaks resilience down into 4 components. What gets you up in the morning? What's your purpose? Connecting with each other and staying connected with each other. She said the most important part of this journey towards resilience is our ability to be creative and innovative and adjust to meet the specific strengths and needs that our communities have. And then the outcome is hope. And shifting, when we're staying in that design, shifting from a threat to a challenge. And when we're in a challenge state, we can problem solve together. And so again, if you've got 20 minutes in your day, or if you've got a whole hour and a half, the whole thing is absolutely fantastic and brilliant. And again, thanks to MHETC and Kelsey Schmitz for leading that. So let's do a really quick brainstorm. If I can get you into breakout rooms, and then we'll come back. Maybe we'll try 4 minutes, Kelly. Can we make this happen?
Sure thing.
Okay. Hi, Ginny. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't worry, we have all of this recorded, so you can listen to the recording. I just saw your chat.
Okay.
If you want to, do you want to join a breakout?
Yeah, I wasn't in one, but Kelly just put me in one. So
okay, awesome. Awesome.
Hey, Susan, I thought I'd catch you real quick here.
Hi, Steve.
So you've been seeing the CEC messages going back and forth.
Yes.
Do you mind if we record that, like a pre-recording, or?
No, not at all. Does that mean that I don't have to go?
No, still have to go.
Okay,
Well,
I'll still go.
Yeah, CEC is doing 2 things this year. They're having the in-person one, and they're following up a month later with a virtual
okay.
recording. And what they're asking is if we can record ahead of time, then we can do our presentation live, and they'll.
Right. People seem really responsive to everything today, Susan. So you nailed it.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. It's striking the balance, right, of everything.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I've just been so impressed with the work you all do. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Couldn't do it without you, my friend. Michigan's rocking it.
I don't know. They are doing some great things here. Yeah.
We learned so much from your leadership in that state. It's just awesome.
I don't know about me, but thank you.
Oh, it's a perfect song for Justin.
All right. I would love to hear about any conversations you all were having. I know we're running really short on time. Can somebody just do like brag about something or offer something in the chat? That would be brilliant.
Hey, Susan, I'll jump in. I'm Mariana Donnelly. I work at the Department of Mental Health in Vermont. And I was just saying that actually one of the LEAs in our area, the superintendent put out an email to all staff saying that this, you know, recognizing what a challenging time this is and how exhausted everybody is, and that it's really important that we're all taking time for ourselves, and asking folks not to check their email on nights and weekends, and saying that it is important to respond to families in a timely manner and students, but that they were also going to be putting out that information to all families and letting them know that they are asking their staff not to do this. And if there's something that's really important, to contact that superintendent, and they would help out in that situation. So I just feel like it was a really nice concrete example of making sure the communication is there for staff, making sure that they're saying, I have your back and I'm going to communicate this to all families. So you don't have to do that either.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's brilliant. I think a lot of folks are setting some wellness boundaries and putting that in kind of policy, right? Putting that embedding that into the culture and fabric and their identity. So I thank you so much for sharing that. It's a perfect illustration of what's going on. So again, I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to end kind of with this. This is something that I think we need to really be bold right now. Again, there's a lot of attention and money flowing into mental health, and we have to be really crystal clear that buying with additional funds without changing the system is going to lead to poor outcomes. We're just going to do that one person at a time, and they're not going to be situated in a nurturing environment. And we've been down this road before with special ed, when, you know, no matter how brilliant that behavior intervention plan is, unless they're being situated in an environment where they're able to thrive, it doesn't do much good. Wellness is not a place. We already articulated that earlier. We should not hire mental health professionals to be referral sources. And shout out to Michelle Sorensen for that quote. I love that. Screening is not a diagnostic assessment. Please screen responsibly. Be prepared to respond. It informs tier 1 instruction. ACEs is not a screener. Say it loud and say it proud. Prevention and promotion, upstream work is really challenging right now given the current crisis level of need, but we have to hold both of those things together. Call out practices that are not in line with our values, set up how we measure fidelity and outcomes before we initiate anything, and we cannot return to status quo. So how will we disrupt and continue to be disruptors, not only as individuals, but maybe we put it on the TIPS agenda and we make that part of our norm, where we're all encouraging each other to disrupt and never going back to the way things were. So I encourage you to be bold. Our kids deserve more, and we need, whatever we invest in needs to actually make an impact. We are in the midst of planning a book club series. We've designed this for several individual sites, but we wanted to create a larger community for those of you who are interested. Dates will be announced shortly. They will be monthly 90-minute sessions to do a deeper dive into each of the chapters. There is some pre-work that we're going to be asking folks to do. There will be discussion questions during the 90-minute session with some opportunities to do some additional fluency builders. The resources today are on this QR code. They've also been populated in the chat, so you can take out your camera, take a picture of this, and it will take you directly to that Google folder with all of the resources that have been highlighted during this presentation. These are the dates for the upcoming PLCs. Remember to join us for our virtual PBIS forum. We are so excited. The Midwest PBIS team has just done an extraordinary amount of planning and preparation for this virtual time. We are going to do some amazing youth-led activities and forums. On December 3rd, when we do come back, this group comes back, we're going to be taking that deep dive into evaluation, followed by teaming structures and then integration with some topics on the horizon based on data for our March, April, and May opportunities to come together and meet. So with that, we are out of time, but I am so appreciative that you all joined our session today. It was absolutely amazing to see your faces. Thank you for all your contributions. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for what you do. We see you, we hear you, we value you. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us in between sessions. So with that, happy Friday. For those of you on the East Coast, I'm totally jealous. You're a lot closer to that weekend than I am, but enjoy, get some relaxing time in for yourselves, and we will see you next time.
Take care, everyone.